Hello. What is up again, podcast peeps? Thanks so much for joining us. We're back, and it's going to be round two of our fantasy draft prep for you here on My Fantasy Podcast from myfantasysportstalk.com. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brandon Reed. My co-host is Dan Shaw. Dan, we're going to try to see how many people we can piss off today. We're doing a great job lately, especially Orlando.
Yeah, Orlando's getting some hate mail. The listeners are letting their voices be heard. And, My Fantasy Podcast is a platform to show hate. And when it's towards Orlando, that's even better because it keeps it off our backs.
Yeah, and you guys are even turning my own peeps, Nick and Judy Pertins, well, Nick anyway, against me. I mean,
smart fantasy players out there.
What?
Smart fantasy players out there. They go against New Breed's thought process, which is going to be good for 2017 success.
So I'm going to go from champ to the gutter. Is that what you're saying?
Based on your early projections, yes.
Okay, we'll see. There's always a trick. There's always a method behind my madness. That's what you guys got to keep in mind, okay? Don't forget it, Nick. But I got an answer for you. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So the rundown for today's show is we're going to bring Orlando in here in just a second, and we're going to answer just a whole bunch of mailbag questions that you guys submitted. So basically answer what you want to talk about. Then at the end of the show, we're basically going to give our top 10, the way we would rank players fantasy going into this fantasy season for pretty much every major category. We're not going to do kickers. We're not going to do defense, but quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight ends. We're going to give you our top 10 in each of those categories at the end of the show. So a whole lot to get into. But before we do, Dan, of course, next week, this is going to be so much fun. Live draft show right here on My Fantasy Podcast.
Yeah, the more we keep talking and planning for it, the more nervous I'm actually getting for it, because during the draft show, I would imagine we're kind of going to give our tips and hints of how we draft, and the listeners, we're actually playing in a league against our own fans. They could be listening and getting our tidbits as we go. So
that's why I'm not entirely truthful. Okay, Some of the things so you outlandish.
You don't even like Eddie Lacy. You're just trying to screw our listeners out there. Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense now.
Never know. But you will be able to find out on the draft show. And it's going to be fun and entertaining, and making a show out of it while trying to juggle building a winning team. And I just think it would have been exciting to even have done that last year. But of course, we weren't doing video at that point, just strictly audio podcast. But it would have been fun to do it last year, because I think I shocked some people. I took Odell Beckham #1 overall, and he was up there in the top 3 projected or so. But kind of a shock that someone took him. So just to give us live and all the fans at home just that the kind of the visuals and the shocks and the awes and the expressions on everybody's faces when we do what we do. Because I'm telling you right now, I got the 3rd pick in the draft, and I don't really know who I'm picking.
Yeah, it's especially now with the lovely Zeke suspension, so it's kind of up in the air. But yeah, I have a feeling we're going to get some shocks just in that first round in general. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how that works out.
Holy Moses. Holy Des the Kitty. Something just happened. But so our fans pick 1 and 2. I have the 3rd pick, and another fan picks 4th. Dan, if you can hear me, maybe I should wait.
You're good. Okay. Des the Kitty wants to be drafted in the first round this year again, and it's not happening. So we've been fighting.
Des the Kitty's like, I walk by every show. Y'all don't give me any airtime. You don't acknowledge me. So this time I'm taking over the show. But anyway, how many fans are actually in the league? Is it 12? It's 12 teams, and how many?
14. It's 14.
We expanded to 14. Okay.
I think we have 5 or 6 fans of the podcast and site that are joining us in the league. So it should be interesting, just to get their perspective. See if they take any of our advice that we dish out on the podcast and on the site.
Yeah. And what I was saying is that one of our fans has the #1 pick. One of our fans has the #2 pick. I have the #3 pick. Then a fan has the 4th pick. So I just wonder who has 1 and 2 if they screw this up somehow. Not going to say names. We'll figure it all out. But if you don't do what you probably should do, and something falls into my lap, I'll graciously take it. But if it doesn't, I'm going to have a little bit of a decision to decide on between now and next Wednesday night, live right here on my fantasy podcast. So it's going to be a good time, Dan. I can't wait. Although, like you, maybe a little bit nervous, but I'll do a few mock drafts. I don't do a ton of mock drafts. I'll let Dan tell me what the ADPs are and start formulating my opinions. Then do a couple of mock drafts the day before our draft. So I'll figure it out, and I'll get a name, and I'll have a great team. And so I can't wait. Dan, what pick are you again?
I think I have the 8th pick. Okay. I think that's what it was. But I like that 8th spot. Kind of in the middle, so you can get in on the. You don't have to wait too long on that turn coming back in our snake draft. So I have a couple guys that I'm targeting. We'll see how the draft goes, but it should be an exciting night, and I'm definitely looking forward to it.
And who was it we were talking about with the last pick? Was it Dylan Davis-Strado?
Yeah, I think it was DDT. He hated that last pick. I don't mind it. I would rather have the last pick than the first pick, personally.
I agree, Dan. You were 100% right, because what you pointed out to him is he was the only one to have 2 picks in the top 15. I'll take that all day long. Here's the thing, though. You're going to miss out on that elite player. Every year there's 4 or 5 elite guys, usually running backs, who you're going to have no chance to get. So you're not going to get an absolute elite player, but you're going to get 2 damn good picks. And that whoever gets that number 1 pick is going to have 1 damn good player, but we're going to start. It's going to be thin pickings when you get back around to your pick.
Especially in a 14-man league. I mean, we jumped up 2 more spots this year, so I think it's going to make it even deeper, and it's going to be slim pickings even sooner. So I'm looking forward to this type of format. And I think Dylan was just kind of scared of his own drafting capabilities. I don't think he has confidence in himself, the way myself and you do, and in what our fantasy team will look like at the end of the night.
And our man Orlando's got something to prove, because fans are calling him out every other day. So let's bring in Orlando. Orlando, go ahead and jump in here. But Dan, Dylan actually won 4 tickets to the ESPN Fantasy? Explain to me, because I don't really remember this event, but it sounds like a huge event.
Yeah, in New York City, the fantasy football convention hosted by an ESPN radio affiliate there. So Dylan won 4 tickets, and he offered some of them up to join him in the convention. So I'm trying to figure it out schedule-wise to get there in basically a week to get to New York City. So logistically, we'll see if it works out. But if it does, it's something I'm really excited and want to go experience. It's kind of funny. I just wrote an article bashing Matthew Berry, and he's the keynote speaker of the press of the conference or convention. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But it definitely would be a great experience. And
you should share the article with him if you get a chance.
Yeah, I don't know if he would like that too much, but it'd just be a great experience, and just to showcase my talent compared to Matthew Berry's, because I have a little bit more confidence in myself than his picks.
Well, I think he would take it in good fun, honestly, because even those pros on ESPN or other sites, NFL Network, whatever, you can never tell. You can't get out there. These players aren't remote controlled, so you can't control what they're really doing. So nobody's really a draft expert. I mean, yeah, Dan, you have a wealth of knowledge, and you did make the championship game, but you lost to me, who barely made the playoffs. It's just some things you can't control. If your team had gone through like you really wanted it to, you probably would have won the championship and beat me. Did you have any major injuries or turmoil basically on your team last year that you can remember?
Honestly, it's a blur of who was even on my roster last year. After that defeat, it kind of kicked me to the curb and gave me some temporary psychosis.
And see, that's the thing, that I didn't really have my ending team. The team I drafted didn't really end the way I anticipated it to, or even fairly close. But I ended up winning the championship. So, for an example, Devontae Freeman, I drafted him very early, probably 2nd round. Ended up trading him in like week 4 for Latavius Murray and Amari Cooper, which served me very well. Drafted Eli Manning on the advice of our own Dan Schalk. And that didn't go very well at all. I'm not sure Eli got more than 21 points all year in one game. It was not good. Had Odell Beckham, he did okay, and it really picked up at the end. But I ended up with Derek Carr as my quarterback. So I had 3 Raiders on my team, and that's not the way I started the season. So you never know where you go from draft to the end of the season. as our own Orlando Torres knows. I'm sure he didn't draft the team he ended up with. So let's bring our man in. It's Orlando Torres from San Antonio. What up, dude?
How's it going, fellas?
Our favorite lesbian back for some more hot lesbo action.
TNA.
Yeah. So your team last year, do you remember, did you have any turmoil? Did it not go the way you thought it would? What happened from draft night to the end of the season for your team?
Yeah, no, at first, I think there was a little question marks with the running backs, obviously. Well, besides Zeke, but yeah, the draft at first on paper looked pretty good, but it went horrible. I think I had Keenan Allen and Allen Robinson, so you know how that turned out.
I do remember that. That's a big blow for you.
And the only one who worked out really good was obviously Zeke and Mike Evans. Other than that, it was just, the waiver wire. So basically, whatever you start off with, that's never the case for anybody. You're never going to stick with that same roster. You're going to have a few pieces, but you're always going to be constantly moving in those couple. And then especially with Danny Woodhead, 10 years ACL right away. Yeah, I wasn't really able to bounce back.
Who was your quarterback last year? I don't even remember.
I had Winston, so that worked out fine.
There you go. Which wouldn't be a bad choice again this year, which we're going to break down again at the end of the show, our top 10 players. Each of us will give our top 10 list for your quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends at the end of the show. So stay tuned at the back end for that, just to get an idea of our list and see how they match up, because I guarantee you that I got a little bit of difference of opinion than these guys right here, and I'm sure I'm going to have a shocker in there. One of them I did intentionally, but you'll find out at the end of the show. But right now, guys, we're going to get into it. Basically, the second round of draft prep coverage for you, right, Dan? We basically spent a whole show last week. We're going to do a second part here tonight before our live draft show next week.
Yeah, I mean, we got oodles of noodles of draft questions. We had to sift through some of the Orlando hate. We couldn't make it an entire show bashing Orlando and his Sammy Watkins and Jared Goff love, but we were able to pull some other questions with some of those Orlando questions. So it's going to be a good show. A lot of fantasy draft prep is going to be in here, who you value, where, and different things. So I'm excited to get it going. And the first question is one of the best ones of the night.
Yeah, so some Orlando hate snuck in there. So, but I'm getting a little bit of hate here in these questions, Dan, and Orlando's getting a little bit of hate. I skimmed through it. Did I miss your hate? Where was your?
Listen, I can go a week free of hate. I've gotten plenty during our time here. So Jackson took a week off because Aaron Judge sucks and the Yankees are failing. So we're skipping right to football only.
Yeah, and no baseball this week. So football only. We got a show, Jackson. It's just no baseball talk. So sorry about that. But so what we're going to do now, My Fantasy Podcast, myfantasysportstalk.com. Guys, check out last week's podcast if you have not, because we broke down a whole lot right there thanks to Nick Perkins, which we'll get to a little bit later in the show. But I got about a dozen or so questions for you. So we're going to just dive in and answer as many mailbag questions from you guys that we can before getting into our top 10 on the back end of the show in preparation for next week's live draft show, 7:30 Eastern time. So the first one, we're going to get right into it. Orlando, is going to be for you, dog. I will not relax, RELAX, about Goff or Watkins, Orlando. Reading that piece on Watkins made me want to punch you right in the face. Nothing you said is accurate, and I hope the fans are smart enough to stay away from any Rams player in fantasy. And I am a Rams fan. Goff will end up being worse than Jamarcus Russell, and I am a Rams fan. Our only hope is that our only decent quarterback, Sean Mannion, will beat out Goff, and that will give value to Watkins. I wouldn't even touch Gurley, and I am a Rams fan. You guys are having your fantasy draft as a show, so you better believe I'll be watching just so I can laugh when Orlando drafts Sammy freaking Watkins. Walter Berry is a Rams fan. Orlando, your show.
All right, look. In Walter's defense, he's used to his team been sucking for so long. I could understand the frustration why he's coming from this. But then again, it sounds like Jeff Fisher is the one who sent this question in disguise because there's just so much hate towards the Rams. And look, I get all the hate. I get what that has set people off. And I'm not saying take Sammy as your number one wide receiver, or trying to put Goff on his high pedestal. But I do see value there.
Let's kind of add context to this. You wrote an article a couple of days ago about this, so that's what he's in response to.
Correct. So yeah, basically, there's a lot of panic. People saying, his value turned to dirt. Dan was saying that. I'm pretty sure you're saying that, Brandon, as well. But hey, look.
Well, and tell the folks at home. I'm sorry to interrupt again, but what was the name of your article?
Why you shouldn't shy away from still adding Sammy Watkins to your lineups. That was the name of the article. But look, you look at last year was horrible. I get it. Goff was horrible. He was historically horrible for a rookie. But he deserves some of the blame. But he can't put all the blame on that. What did Todd Gurley call the offense last year? He called it was like playing a middle school offense. That's Todd Gurley, man. Come on. Last year he had a bad year, and basically Goff was just thrown to the Lions. I'm not saying he's gonna turn out to be this pretty good quarterback, but I'm not gonna put the entire blame on him. I think Jared Fisher was more worried about getting the team to LA and then worried about running the damn offense over there in Los Angeles. So I still see fantasy value in Sammy Watkins, as funny as that may seem. I'm not going to say take him early, but especially in the deeper league, I mean, you still got a guy who could, probably put it along in the midseason, probably have around 60, 70 catches, over 1,000 yards set. That's pretty good value if you ask me for his ADP, supposedly just hitting rock bottom. I would jump on that.
I don't even think it's necessarily Sammy Watkins in this situation. I feel for Sammy Watkins. I wish that Sammy Watkins would have went from a bad situation to a better situation, but I'm not sure he did. It's more about the unknown with Jared Goff at this point. I mean, right, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not a believer in Tyrod Taylor as a franchise quarterback, as a starting quarterback. But I mean, Sammy went to the worst possible scenario in the NFL. I mean, Jared Goff is just not an NFL type quarterback. I understand you might want to bring him along, but I mean, just look at the first and second pick of last year's draft. You had Jared Goff, sat on the bench for 8 games, started 7, obviously lost all 7 and looked terrible doing so. Where you had Carson Wentz drafted number 2 overall being thrown into the fire with the Eagles. He came from an FCS school, so not even a Division I big-time program like Goff, and he looked pretty solid. Dak Prescott, I mean, there's just – in this day and age, I don't know if sitting a quarterback to help them get accustomed to the NFL is the way to go, and especially from the one guy who was supposed to be the most NFL ready coming out of school. So, I mean, New Breed, you covered him throughout the summer on Hard Knocks. You knew he didn't have it in the mental capacity for it. So I'm just worried that the Rams are going to be tough with him as their starting quarterback, hurting all the targets. And then it's not even just Watkins. They just have so many wide receivers now that where's the ball going to go when the maybe 20 times they pass a game? It's going to go to Watkins, Robert Woods. If Tavon Austin stays on the team, him. I like Cooper Kupp best out of everybody on the Rams squad. He's a rookie wide receiver out of Washington, Eastern Washington. So they have a lot of weapons. They don't really have a guy to get them the ball, but it's just going to be spread out too much, and Gurley, they're still going to be running the ball more than they pass.
Yeah, man, I think with the situation, you mentioned the Hard Knocks thing. I think the situation is that it doesn't take long to sit down, and maybe he can get better. He should get better. Of course he should get better, talking about Jared Goff, but it didn't take much time to sit down with him in a meeting room. It wasn't even on the field that I've just made my mind up about Jared Goff. It was in the meeting rooms. It was in the quarterback conferences that he just didn't seem like he was grasping it. I don't know. He just didn't give full effort. Maybe he cruised in football his entire life until this point, and he's going to have to work a lot harder for it. I just don't see it. I just don't see it when it comes to Jared Goff. But I'm kind of with Walter here. I believe Sean Mannion may be your best option at this point, I guess, at quarterback. You got Dan Orlovsky, but Sean Mannion is a very accurate quarterback. You know, back in the Hard Knock series, he was throwing some balls that were just, pick a 2-inch spot out there 40 yards from here and tell me to hit it. I'll hit it. You know, it's just very accurate, like hitting goalposts from the 40-yard line. First try. I think he's a very accurate quarterback. I'm just not a favorite of Jared Goff. So I just wish Sammy could have done better is my only thing. But I think Sean McVay, is it Sean McVay? The coach?
We can't put the entire blame on Sammy for where he was going.
No, definitely not. That's why I feel for him.
Yeah, no. And I understand all the golf stuff, and the Sean Mannion guy. But I'm pretty sure it'd be a while before we see him because they took him number 1 overall his second year. I don't think they're just going to throw Golf right away on the bench. You know, even if that's the better situation, I'm just saying there's no way in Sam. Looking at Watkins in the second year, I don't just think it goes completely to dirt. I still believe there's something there. It's yet to be seen, but I mean. That was what the whole article was just based on. I would, especially like in deeper league, and you get him at a pretty good value. I wouldn't pass on a guy like Watkins. I know the QB situation is pretty bad, but you look at Kenny Britt last year. Kenny Britt in LA, and he had a pretty decent breakout season with Goff as a quarterback, and Watkins is a hell of a lot better. I'm not worried about Robert Woods.
Case Keenum was quarterback for a lot of those games, and that's the guy I think they should have stuck with, honestly.
And, well, even with Robert Woods, I'm not too worried about that because Sammy Watkins faced them all, in Buffalo, so he's no stranger to Robert Woods. I mean, Cooper Kupp is pretty interesting, but the Sammy Watkins situation, I'm not entirely scared of it. But it's just what's the situation in LA?
Well, you made a point about Goff being number 1 pick, and I think that's why they're handcuffed here. It's time to put Goff in and let him fall flat on his face if that's what he's going to do, because you spent the number 1 pick on him. So you have to do it this season and be over with this experiment, or have enough hope that he maybe could be the guy. So you have to. But I think Sean Mannion may be a better quarterback at this point. But McVay was brought in as a young mentor to quarterbacks, good quarterback coach, to try to bring this young guy along. So we'll see if it happens. I don't think it's going to happen, though. I'm kind of with Dan. I don't think it's going to happen. I just don't think this is the guy. Unfortunately, you spent the number 1 pick on him, and you're handcuffed now. You have to. But I'm also kind of with Orlando a little bit here. If you're talking about rounds, if you're getting up to 8, 9, 10, depending on how deep your league is, I'm not shying away from Sammy too bad, just because I think he's going to be an athlete. Maybe a fresh start will help him out. Dan, you saw him best, I guess, in Buffalo really closely. Do you believe in Sammy Watkins, the athlete, the receiver?
Dan just got the Thomas Take syndrome.
Oh, so, he'll be back.
He'll be right back. He could find his way back to us.
I kind of think that, I don't know, maybe fresh start will be a little bit better for Sammy, but Jared Goff better improve really quickly. And I'm not a Rams fan. I'm really not a Rams fan, Walter Berry. That's for damn sure. I'm a Titans fan, so you know why I'm not a St. Louis Rams fan. Or, well, St. Louis or L.A. Greatest show on turf, my a-hole. But, yeah. We'll see. Orlando took a lot of heat for that one.
I mean, respectfully so. I understand it. I think the question did take a different bit of a curve than what I actually meant the article as. But then again, I can't blame Walter. I mean, he's a Rams fan.
Well, I don't think even you, Orlando, were saying take him in the first 5 rounds.
No, but I'm just saying I could understand why Walter's a little, was a little antsy, a little upset over this. Why it kind of rubbed him wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, he's a Rams fan. They've been average for pretty long. So I could understand that, Walter. I can understand.
Well, what I get from Walter is that he thinks Jared Goff sucks too. No confidence, and that's ultimately as a Rams fan.
That's going to be frustrating when your franchise like that just keeps on making those ridiculous moves. Imagine how Browns fans feel. Maybe not this season. They look like they're going to be pretty good, but you look at some of the moves they made. Even back when some of the drafts where they passed on certain guys, and you look at some of their picks that they took in the early rounds that are still with the team or how they turned out. I mean, it's hasn't been great in management either.
Yeah. So, Walter, good luck to you this season. I think I'm right there with you. Jared Goff is not the guy. Sorry, this is turning into a Jared Goff bashing question, but that's kind of what you did. And again, to wrap it up, Orlando wasn't saying take him in the first 5 rounds. Definitely not. It is what it is. But thanks for the question, Walter Berry, to kick us off on the draft prep show before our live draft. In case you hadn't heard, I guess I hadn't mentioned enough. Next week, 7:30 Eastern time, right here on My Fantasy Podcast. Follow along with us. Okay. Now, the next one is from my guys, Nick and Judy Pertins. Hey, Brandon, to answer your question, and we mentioned this last week, I kind of wondered about as far as football. We knew where the household stood, Orlando, as far as basketball goes. Nick was the Grizzlies guy, and Judy was the Spurs gal. So we knew that all along, but we really didn't know about football 100%. Hey, Brandon, to answer your question, we are both Titans fans. Yes. Really excited about the season, and thanks for so much help last week. That was a lot of fun and a great question, Nick. So thank you. I know Nick appreciates it. So this is Judy. So I'm sorry, Judy, thank you. And Nick, both you guys. You confuse me so much. It's 2 people talking in my head at once here with one paragraph. But anyway, they both appreciate it. Okay, Nick here. So we switched to Nick. I felt the need to comment after you asked why I left Eddie Lacy off our list last week. Brandon, I usually agree with everything you say, but Eddie Lacy is going to bust all over his fantasy owner's face. That sounds nasty. Totally agree with Dan in Orlando. ProSize is the back to own there. So best of luck, and thanks for always taking our questions. Your faves, Nick and Judy. So, okay, Orlando. So let me say this to get us started on this question. It's still early, but you know what? We're both going to be wrong. The back to own on the Seattle Seahawks is probably Thomas Rawls. I think he's going to get the starting position. I think he's going to beat out Eddie Lacy and get the majority of the carries if you absolutely have faith and want a Seahawks running back. The thing about ProSize is he's going to do what he's going to do, and that is get occasional third down carries. He has a role. He has a definite role. Yes. But ProSize in that role is going to be occasional third down carries. And I don't like that. I don't like a back as far as fantasy goes, unless you're talking about way down the depth chart. If you want to, draft order, if you're talking about 11, 12 on, yeah, maybe there's some value in CJ ProSize, but I ain't touching him. He's not going to get the first and second down carries, which I think are so crucial for our RB1 or RB2. So I think it's ultimately going to be Thomas Rawls. And this other kid, Christopher Carson, I think his name is Christopher Carson, is working his way up steadily up the depth chart too and impressing. May have even overtaken Alex Collins from Arkansas at this time. So you got to watch out. And here's the thing, Orlando. Pete Carroll said he does not want a running back by committee system this year. He wants to be solid in his guys. So I don't think there's going to be room for 3, and 1 and 2 are going to get the majority of the carries, and that 3 is probably CJ ProSize, and I just don't know if there's going to be enough for heavy fantasy value there.
Yeah, well, I see where you're coming from, and even in mock drafts, it's ridiculous. I think Eddie Lacy's going like in the 7th or 8th round, and Thomas Rawls is literally going like in the 14th round, 13th round. You get him super cheap. The way mocks are going, I'll probably end up with a guy like Thomas Rawls rather than Eddie Lacy. Now, I'm not sure how this is going to play out, but I think the Seahawks want Rawls to be their guy. And he's been proven, he's proved to be a pretty damn good player when he's on the field, but it's always just been his health. That's the same thing with Eddie Lacy, but he's been getting reps as the one. Now, I don't know, they're trying to ease Eddie Lacy back into the lineup because, he had that ankle surgery going on last offseason. So I don't know, they're trying to just ease him and eventually make his way into the first reps with the ones, or if this is a plan to have Eddie Lacy's insurance and hope that Thomas Rawls could play for more than 12 games this season. But with CJ ProSize, yes, it does sound ridiculous, but I think regardless of who goes first, Rawls or Lacy, I would still pick ProSize over one of the others. Obviously, if I'm getting Rawls in the 14th round, I'm going to take that all day because that's a possible starting running back you're getting for dirt cheap. the way ADP is. But I mean, all that's going to get shooken up, especially with week preseason games 2 and 3 coming up. But Process is pretty interesting, and if it wasn't for him having that season-ending injury last year, I think his ADP would have been a lot higher than what it currently is. But obviously, with this muddy backfield with all three running backs, it kind of makes it difficult on who you're going to pick.
Yeah, and I will say this, as far as solidified role and having your job cemented and solidified right now, that guy is CJ Procise. But like I said, it's a third down carrying back, and that's what I just don't trust when it comes to him. I'm not drafting guys who are third down back, only. The Detroit Lions have had messes like that in the past several years, and it makes it it makes it very frustrating as a fantasy owner. So I don't want that mess. So I don't. Orlando, do you know what Rawls ADP is versus Eddie Lacy ADP? Eddie Lacy is being drafted higher than Thomas Rawls at this point.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You could get Eddie Lacy right now about the 7th or 8th round, and Thomas Ross, you could literally take them at the end of the 13th, early 14th. That's where he's going. So yeah, it's a pretty wide margin between the two running backs, and CJ Procise is going like the 10th or 11th. So that does say a lot. There are a lot of people who are hopping on the CJ Procise train as well. But the fact that you could get Thomas Ross in 14th, and I just think a lot of fans are forgetting about his injury, much like Eddie Lacy's. Thomas Ross started off pretty hot last year playing for the Seahawks, and I know 2014 when he went in for Marshawn Lynch, he played pretty good, or 2015 when that was, he had a pretty good season. So I'm not going to completely write off Thomas Ross because I know he wants to be in a starting lineup, and I'm getting a vibe from practice that Seattle wants Thomas Ross to be their starting running back as well. If Eddie Lacy is as good as he is, we know what we're going to get with Eddie Lacy. But
that's what I'm scared of with Procise, man. I'm scared that Thomas Rawls is gonna lock up the #1 job, but Eddie Lacy is kind of a power guy as well, and he's gonna steal some of Procise's third down carries because you got to fit him in somewhere. You didn't go get him for no reason. So
the thing what scares me about both guys is they're both power running backs where they just run so viciously, and both guys are not scared of contact. That's why these guys are always hurt. So that's one thing that worries about me about both running backs. You look at Thomas Ross, he wasn't scared of contact, same way as Marshawn Lynch when he was there, and Eddie Lacy's not scared of contact either. But then that does punish their bodies a bit, and that's why we're in a situation we are now with them having recovered from these injuries.
That is a great point. So it's the style of play, too, that might want to scare you off of those guys, too, because they're just reckless, and chances are they may get hurt again. But take it for what it is. I would say be cautious with CJ Procise, Nick. We'll see how it plays out in the last couple of preseason games as far as the Seahawks depth chart. But I'm getting more scared of any of them, to be honest with you. So we'll see. But thanks for the question. Thanks for usually agreeing with me. I don't know if I swayed you a little bit or helped you out on today's show, but appreciate the questions each and every week. So we're gonna try to get Dan back in here. I don't know, man. Computer's flipping up on him. It's maybe Des the Kitty hit a wrong button on her way by a second ago.
I'm telling you, he got that Thomas Take syndrome. He's over there somewhere with Thomas, somewhere in Buffalo, having a chicken wing and a margarita somewhere.
It's something with the fiber in Buffalo. That's my only explanation. But we're about to continue these mailbag questions next. You're listening to and watching My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. So we've been through Orlando's hate with Walter Berry. We've been through a little bit of my hate. They didn't really hate, just a difference of opinion with me and my man Nick Burtons. And so now we're about to get into really the close to the #1 wide receiver debate. Although there's another guy I might want to sneak into this conversation, me personally. But this question is real short, and it comes from Zaravone. Sorry, my light start there. Zaravone. Hope I pronounced the name correctly. Who would you rather draft? A.B. Antonio Brown or Odell Beckham Jr.? Orlando?
See, this is a tough one for me. because I think this is a year that Odell can actually jump Antonio Brown and possibly be the number one wide receiver that we're talking about next year and going into fantasy. So, man, especially with Sterling Shepard being gone, I know Brandon Marshall's there. You got Evan Ingram who's looking to take targets too. With Shepard gone, but I guess I'll take Antonio Brown right now over Odell, but it's pretty damn close, especially because I have Odell literally number 2 right behind Antonio Brown. I don't have Julio Jones. I have Antonio Brown, basically 1A and 1B in Odell. So I have them pretty close. So I guess Brown, because what you have with Antonio Brown, but Odell is literally like right there, ready to leapfrog him as a top guy.
Okay, well, without giving too much away about my strategy, where's Mike Evans? He was your guy, dude. He served you great last year, and he's only going to have a better year this year. Hey, come on, Mike Evans ain't in your top 3.
No. I understand that. I was trying to stick to Zaro's asking over here. But yeah, I do have Evans at 3. And Julio Jones is a hell of a player. I hate to go off topic.
Okay,
Julio
that's
Jones
what I'm saying. That's why you mentioned Julio Jones, so I just assumed that you were putting him 3.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, basically I have AB 1 and then Odell 2. So that's how close I have them. And I do think this is a season that Odell jumps over Antonio Brown's value or ADP going into next season that puts him as a number 1 wide receiver. So it's pretty close, but for this season, I'll probably stick with Antonio Brown over Odell. But I don't have a problem with either one. This is a pretty damn good question, a pretty good problem to have, I would say, depending on where you're drafting.
Yeah, it is close, and that's, like I said, I took ODB last year, number 1 overall. So I think this year is more of a trend of running backs, but we'll see what happens. But I think we got our man Dan Schalk back. Actually, we got 2 of them right now. One of them just looking like a cool-ass dude on the screen.
He got that Thomas Take syndrome.
What's going on? Orlando, do you see 2 Dan Schalks right now?
I only see 1 Dan Schalk.
Okay, I see 2 Dan Schalks. One of them just posing like this. The other one is like moving around, getting his shaking going on. So mad he's missed 2 questions.
He missed out on
I'll survive.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, I only got 1 Dan Schalk now. Go ahead.
I think it was planned by Brandon because he knew that Eddie Lacy question was next. So you did something to my facilities here.
We're over that. You missed it. Sorry. The verdict was Eddie Lacy's going to be great. CJ Prosise is not going to be very good.
Nick, get at me and tell me what really happened.
We've moved on. But anyway, yeah. Sorry you missed that. We bashed Jared Goff. You were in on most of that. And then we talked about the Seahawks backfield mess. But I think it's going to be a mess. But I really wouldn't want to own any of them. But anyway, you didn't miss much there. It was just me patching things up with my boy Nick. But the next question, Zara Vone asks is what we're discussing now is Antonio Brown or Odell Beckham Jr. Is this close to you, Dan? Not close? 1, 2? How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, it's decently close. I would personally take Odell. I think Antonio's on the downside of his, being a top 3 fantasy wide receiver in his career. I think he's kind of going towards the wayside of that. I don't think you're going to continually see over 100 receptions each year, and Odell just has that upside, younger, faster. I like their offense more personally. I like what the Giants can do with their wide receiver sets. So I personally would take Odell in any format scenario over Antonio Brown this year.
Yep, I like that. I like to hear someone else finally say that. I don't have as much confidence in Antonio Brown this year. Do you guys realize he's been the number 1 producing fantasy receiver for the last 4 years? That's not going to continue. They just can't continue. Plus, you're relying on, as Dan has mentioned before, Ben Roethlisberger's health and Antonio Brown's health, which he's been a stud out there too. So I hate to say it for other reasons, due to injury or other players' performance or anything like that, but things are going to happen. It's trends, and sometimes you're due for things like that. So I'm definitely ranking Odell over AB, but I'm not going to give away too much here, but neither one of those guys is my top receiver this year. But my preference is ODB. Thanks for the question, Zara. Orlando, you're still going with AB?
Yeah, it's really close.
But
And
he's
like
being drafted ridiculously high in some of these drafts, guys. I mean, like, yeah,
no, I've
there's a
seen
lot
him
of people
go as number
one.
one.
Yeah, right.
That is ridiculous. I seen him go as a number one pick over David Johnson, over Le'Veon Bell, over Zeke. And Zeke, I could understand, but I've seen him go over like it was like 2 years ago. It's ridiculous. So he is going pretty high. So if that's the case. Yeah, I'm sticky with Odell, but it literally is 1A, 1B with those two guys.
Yep, very close. On the other hand, you're relying on Eli Manning with Odell Beckham Jr. Now with Brandon Marshall.
It's the same. Eli, you look at it, he was pretty bad. You had Eli, you had Odell, you had actually both guys. So you know
Yeah,
how
but
it was.
Eli wasn't the man. Eli got dropped about week 4 or 5, or not dropped, but moved to the bench.
Well, you got to worry about his noodle arm too. Like he was taking hits too, and then obviously with Big Ben, you got to worry about that home road stretch, and he's always taking a guy who's taking beating too. So there's both concerns. You don't question the talent with both of the players. You question their quarterback and who's getting them the ball.
Well, we're going to talk about our top 10. That will kind of break things down and give things away from what I was talking about earlier, Zara. So stay tuned to the end of the podcast for that. We'll give our top 10 in every major position: quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and tight end. All right, next question comes from Caleb Harvey. In my league, we get 1 point for every 25 yards of return. Where would you draft Tyreek Hill? So here's the thing. If your league is one of those ones that you mentioned giving 1 point for every 25 yards on a return, but if your league is also one of those leagues that gives bonus points, a big bonus for 40 plus, 50 plus yards, carries, and then plus touchdown points as well, then I'm saying you might want to look at Tyreek Hill in the second round. I did a lot of damage in the league about 3 years ago with Cordero Patterson of the Vikings because he was returning kicks, and we got bonus points for every return over 40 and 50, I think. And so if you got a return over 40 or 50 yards and scored a touchdown on that return, which Cordero Patterson did a couple of times that year, you're looking at like a 10, 12-point play. I mean, huge, massive, maybe even more than that. I don't remember how the points stacked up, but it was a huge play. So if your league is one of those that gives bonus points as well as the 1 per every 25 yards on the return, and then plus, of course, the if you do happen to return the kick and get the touchdown points, and I'd say Tyreek Hill is a much bigger asset because, like I said, Cordell Patterson was he was killing it. You know, he really turned out to be a top fantasy stud because of that. If you happen to play in a league like that, so Tyreek Hill adds definite value there. And again, it depends on how deep your league is as well. So take a look at that. But great question. And I think that's something you got to consider that we just don't know, Caleb. Dan, what do you think?
For me this season, it doesn't do a whole lot to Tyreek's value. They're taking him off punt returns. So he's not going to be their primary return man anymore in Kansas City. So I think that's going to hurt that value. And then if you look at what he did last year, where he was a beast on special teams, if you add up all of his yards, not looking at his touchdowns, but if you add up all of his return yards, it equates to 38 points. Per that 25-yard statistic. So I'm not jumping up multiple rounds to grab Tyreek Hill. I don't think he's going to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. He's supposed to be the Chiefs wide receiver, their first wide receiver. I don't even think he's going to end up as their leader in receptions, yards, touchdowns, any of that. I don't see him as a true legit wide receiver in the NFL that can stand on the outside and consistently catch passes. So I have him pretty low. Like in a regular league, I would say maybe 6th or 7th round. He's going to be gone before that because teams are just overdrafting him. But with that return yards, I would bump it up maybe around to the 5th round, but it's not too high because I don't think he's going to be their primary returner consistently. They're going to throw him back there maybe once or twice a game. But every single time a team punts or kicks off, I don't think he's going to be the man back there. So temper your expectations when it comes to the return yards this year.
Orlando?
Yeah, no, 1 point per 25 points. Seeing what he did last season, I would draft him. But again, it depends where. But with that just makes his value go up a little bit more. So with the guy with explosiveness like that, I would take a chance with a guy like Tyreek Hill.
Okay, and again, like I was saying, it depends on the rules of your league. If you are getting those bonus points, because Dan mentioned the 38 points. So, but how many within those yards were 40 or 50-yard runs? I mean, that's what we don't know. And then how many points would you have got for those in your league? So it just depends. And again, how deep your league is. So a lot of things to consider there, but very good question. I don't mind it at all. It's something I would look into outside other than the fact that our league, we don't get return yardage at all, do we? Are we one for every 25 or are we not anything?
No, I don't think return yards count at all.
I don't think so. Yeah. So, but great question, Caleb. Let's move on. Next one comes from Ulysses S. I'm sorry, Ryan Ulysses Grant. This may seem like a crazy question. It's okay. We get plenty of them. Some of them ain't even questions. They're just like, you suck. But I am in a 32-man league. Each of us takes a team name of a real team. I'm the Chicago Bears. But we can draft any player just like a normal draft, just a lot deeper. And I'm really considering drafting Tony Romo as my last pick on the chance that he returns if Dak gets injured. Smart to do so. FYI, just remember a 32-man league, and we are drafting backups and third stringers to be our backup, so the picking is very slim. Kind of like Orlando's chances, it seems, in your fantasy league. Much love, brother.
Hate doesn't stop.
Ryan, I know, with the subtle shots. It has nothing.
That was a great one. That just nice, threw it right in at the end there. That was great.
Ryan Ulysses Grant. See, this almost sounds like a Dan question. It almost sounds like Dan wrote this and say, "Hey, submit this for me on my website," because he talks about Romo returning. Because Dak's gonna get hurt. Romo's gonna return. All the things Dan has been preaching for about 18 months. And then take a little shot at Orlando. So I don't know. I'm gonna give it to you guys. You're the Romo guys, and you're the Dallas guys. So you answer Ryan Ulysses S. Grant's question.
I would say sure. Why not? I mean, when you're getting that late and that deep of a draft, I mean, it's either that or.
Here's a quick question though. Before you go on, you think is he an option? Is he an option in standard leagues right now, ESPN or whatever? He is. Yes, okay. Yeah. Okay.
He's still in the roster queue. So, yeah, you can. And like you said, you're going to be drafting second and third stringers at that point anyways. So I would take a retired Tony Romo over, I don't know, a Cardell Jones with the LA Chargers or something like that. So, I don't know. I've never been in that type of league before, so it's a little bit hard. But a last pick in a 32-man, I mean, overall, that's got to be like 200 or 300 some odd players deep. That's crazy. So, yeah, why not?
I mean, if you're looking at third string, seriously, Jesus.
You have to. You have to in that deep a league. That's. I can only imagine some of the starting running backs in that league. That your starting lineup that you play every single week has to be pretty weak.
So here's my question. I just wonder, is he a Bears fan, do you think? As he mentioned, everyone has to take a league name. I wonder if he's a Bears fan. That's the question. So, I mean, but my answer would be, no, you ain't looking at Tony Romo. Didn't you learn your lesson last year when he's officially in the NFL? He ain't even in the NFL.
He hasn't filed his retirement papers yet.
It doesn't matter. But
still officially in the NFL.
Here's the thing: if you're a Bears fan, I'm looking more at Trubisky. If he's ultimately named the starter, not going to be available, but maybe I look at Mike Glennon. One of those guys is not going to be the starter, so one of them may be available for him. I'm looking at guys like that. I'm looking at maybe even Kellen Moore, Luke McCown on the Cowboys, Deshaun Kaiser, someone who's looked good, another rookie who has looked good in preseason so far. Anybody like that. I'm not looking at Tony Romo. I'm done with this. Orlando, go ahead. I know you're anxious. Go ahead.
No, yeah. Why would you not take him number one, Brandon? You know he's Romo the Great. Come on.
I hope you do. I hope Orlando takes him like 8, 9, 10. Take him 12, Orlando.
That was a little bit for Walter. I know Walter tuned in so you can see me take these ridiculous picks. I wouldn't take a guy like Romo. Like, seeing some of the interviews he's done, he's completely content with the broadcasting stuff. I know maybe the Jay Cutler situation might have, brought up the Tony Romo question for Ryan. But no, I mean, if anything, I would take the Rams backup. Who's the guy? Sean Mannion. He has a better chance, I think, of getting on points than Romo does right now. This is a ridiculous deep league. But as much as I love Romo, I wouldn't burn the spot for Romo. Even though you could probably you could burn a spot or two in this kind of league.
Well, even my guy Paxton Lynch, who Elway wants to succeed so bad, it's not looking like he's going to claim the starting job again. Going to be a repeat of last year with Trevor Siemian starting. So But at some point, Trevor Siemian is not going to look good, so Paxton Lynch is probably going to enter the game. Somebody like that. I don't know. I'm taking somebody like that, not somebody that's not even in the league right now who couldn't stay healthy when he was in the league. Done with that craziness, man. Sounds like Dan's question. I don't know if Ryan Ulysses Grant sounds made up. Sounds made up, seriously.
There was a picture of Ulysses S. Grant, the president, as the profile picture. So we're answering presidential questions now.
Yeah, even more. Yeah, sounds made up. Sounds made up. So anyway, that's our answers. I appreciate the question. That was a good one, I guess, for two Cowboys fans on the show. But we'll see. So the next one comes from Dylan Davis. Okay, so he's got a list here. Best sixth round targets. Rank them and explain why you like them or dislike them. His choices are Willie Snead, Brandon Marshall, Deshaun Jackson, Adrian Peterson, Doug Martin, Jimmy Graham, and Delaney Walker. Please rank these guys, Dan.
This is kind of tough. A couple of these guys I won't even have on my draft board, so I would throw out Adrian Peterson and Doug Martin right away. There's guys I'm not even looking at considering drafting. And then if you're looking at the sixth round, you have a couple tight ends on here. I like them, but I wouldn't take them in the sixth round. Jimmy Graham, Delaney Walker, solid tight ends, but I would probably wait another round or two before I snag my starting tight end. So the way I'm looking at it here, I would actually, out of all of them, I like Willie Snead the best. I think he's going to have the best fantasy season. He's probably the worst name on that list the way you look at it, but he's now going to be that number two guy who I believe will be the number two guy in New Orleans. People are talking about Ted Ginn. I'm not too worried about Ted Ginn stealing a whole lot of numbers. But Snead outside of Michael Thomas in that pass-oriented offense in New Orleans, I like Snead. Then a guy like Deshaun Jackson opposite Mike Evans in Tampa, and then Brandon Marshall, opposite Odell Beckham in New York. So those are the three guys that I would look at in the sixth round. I like Jimmy Graham a lot this year, despite not liking Russell Wilson. But I just think sixth round is a little bit too early for a tight end. And Adrian Peterson is just garbage and a half. And Doug Martin, I'm not drafting this year.
Garbage and a half. Let me ask you real quick before I get into Orlando. Why are you so down on Doug Martin?
I think they're going to be so much by a running back by committee. You're going to see Jacquizz Rodgers steal a lot of time, Charles Sims steal a lot of time. They drafted Jeremy McNichols in the draft, a rookie running back out of Boise State. I think it's just going to be so much of a committee approach there. They're going to pass the ball a lot, and I don't think Doug Martin's going to be on the field in those situations. You're going to see Charles Sims and Rodgers get those kind of looks. And isn't Doug Martin suspended to start the season? I don't even know if he is.
4 games. 3 games.
Yeah, I think that even adds to it.
3 or 4, so yeah. So, I mean, that hurts a little bit, I guess. So, Orlando, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm the same with Dan. I love Willie Snead, especially in the 6. With, Cooks being gone, I'm not worried about Ted again. I think his target shares is going to go up quite a bit, and especially in PPR format, still Snead is a steal. I do like Brandon Marshall a little bit more. I did not so much with Sterling Shepard. I wouldn't touch him in the 6, but with Shepard being out, so I'll take a guy like Marshall. Deshaun Jackson too, but you're taking a risk, especially guy who was kind of have hamstring injuries. Other than that, I might take a chance on Jimmy Graham in the 6, depending on the size of the league. Delaney Walker, no. Again, like I said last week, I'll take Graham over Walker. So I might take a flyer on Graham, but Walker, no. Adrian Peterson, no. That's way too early. And the same thing with Martin. I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on Martin, but not in the 6, especially with the guy who has a cloudy backfield right now. Where you don't even know what he's going to do when he comes back in week 4.
Yeah, that does throw a wrinkle in it because I had Doug Martin a little bit higher outside that, but outside the suspension is, I think he will get his workload, Dan. I don't know that I don't really trust Jacquizz Rodgers to start getting a much.
It's Dirk Cutter. I don't either, but Dirk Cutter loves the guy. He brought him over from Atlanta, and he gave him touches last year ahead of Martin in crucial situations in the fourth quarter. And the only reason I know that is because I was a Doug Martin owner last year, and I got killed. By how many touches Rodgers ended up stealing from him.
Yeah, and here's another thing about Hard Knocks, which I apologize to folks. Been incredibly busy, but I'm gonna get the Hard Knocks piece. I haven't even had a chance to watch it, so I'll get the piece out as soon as I watch it. It will be soon, I promise you. But from just a little bit of interviews I've seen with Dirk Cutter and the first episode of Hard Knocks. Again, haven't watched episode 2, but I ain't so sure about this dude. I just ain't so sure about this dude, but we'll see. So my ranking goes a little something like this. First of all, Deshaun Jackson is my number one because dude is a playmaker and still got it, and he's gonna have the guy to make plays with in Jameis Winston. And Delaney Walker is just a stud. He's Marcus Mariota's crutch. You know, he's just going to be that guy, okay, that he can rely on. So neither one of those guys should be available in your 6th round. Did he say how big his lead is? He doesn't say how big his league is, but those dudes should not be left in the 6th round. I don't know. It depends on how big the league is. So I can't figure out the math in my head right now, but I would think that I'd have maybe one of the Deshaun Jackson before the 4th round or 6th round. Sorry. Brandon Marshall, I ranked him 3rd. Willie Snead, I had him number 1, guys. I had him number 1, so I looked around at some depth charts and updated depth charts, and he's currently listed behind Michael Thomas, of course, and Ted Ginn, which I really thought Willie Snead would have been number 2, but I don't think you're going to have a toss-up there. Drew Brees is going to spread the action out so much that it's going to be hard for a guy who's supposed the 3rd wide receiver to get a whole lot of production. You are talking about 6th round here, so I don't know. Depends on the size of your league. Then Doug Martin slipped because of the suspended. I have 4 games is what I read today, but 3 or 4 games, a little bit of a significant time. We'll see. He's been on the Hard Knock series, though. Looks okay. We'll see what happens as far as production-wise. He looks okay. And then lastly, Jimmy Graham. You can tell how down I am on Jimmy Graham. Not a fan of Jimmy Graham. He moved to the wrong system. He was great in New Orleans. Wrong system for Jimmy Graham in Seattle. I will never draft Jimmy Graham in Seattle. And then AP, I'm with Dan. AP's out of the league as far as I'm concerned. Never touch him. Never touch him. But again, when you mention the 6th round, Dylan, it really depends on how big your league is. We'd appreciate that information so we can kind of figure out a little bit more math as to who may be left and how deep we are at that point. But anyway, those are our rankings. But great list, great question. We're all going to run into guys, and we're going to have to pick probably between guys just like that, Dylan. So great question. Appreciate it. Next one comes from Frank Tortuga. I'm so confused. 6-game, 4-game, maybe 2-game appeal court. Jerry Goodell. WTF is going to happen to Zeke? And where the hell do I draft him in a 12-man redraft? Frank Tortuga. Dan, what does he mean by redraft? Are we talking about keepers here? What are we talking about? Redraft?
No, this is your lovely. You always talk about you want you're the one pitching redraft throughout the whole summer, and you don't even know what it means.
No, I just call it a draft. You know, I call that a draft. You know, it's a
redraft instead of keeping players. Basically, it's for people who are scared to keep players, like our own new breed. And
never scared. Why would the champion be scared?
You got lucky. Your roster is weak.
I got lucky. Why would the champion be scared, guys? That's just something you're throwing out there. I think the draft is the most fun part of the league, unless you're playing in the championship game. That's just me. Always have thought that. I want to redraft every single year. I don't want so-and-so to have, like Orlando, probably keep either Mike Evans or Zeke Elliott. I don't want him to have those guys tied up for 3 or 4 years. I want to have the chance. Plus, this year, I'm not as high on Zeke Elliott, and I'm a lot higher on Mike Evans. So maybe I'd have one of those guys number 1. That's the thing. Redraft. Do it all over again, you know? So, but, man, great job, Frank Tortuga. You're in the right kind of league. I like your league. I've just never seen that redraft. You know, it's just a draft. You just draft. Only a keeper league is the crazy stuff. But this is your guys' question because I ain't really keeping up with it daily. I know Dan is. Orlando probably is too, being there in Texas. But we're asking what is going to happen with Zeke. Dan is of the opinion this thing's going to get drawn out. We're not even going to have a solution by the start of the season, so no worries.
Yeah, basically, he filed his appeal today. Supposedly there's an appeal hearing scheduled for August 29th, which is obviously before the season. But here's the thing. I mean, just looking at what Tom Brady did with the Deflategate, even if he loses his appeal, he can take it to the courts, file an injunction, and get a stay, a motion of stay granted so he can still play while it's drawn out through the court process. I expect Zeke and the Cowboys organization to fight this. I don't think they're just going to fold it in. I mean, the Patriots and Tom Brady eventually did after an entire year. Brady played the whole season and after Deflategate, and then came back and was suspended the following year. So
okay, but here's the appeals court hearing is not till the 29th, I believe. Our draft is next Wednesday, the 23rd. How does that affect? Because how many people are drafting? If you're not drafting until before, I mean, if you're drafting anytime between now and the 28th or 29th, whenever the appeal hearing is, what do? You don't know.
So just for me, the way I'm approaching it, because I have 2 drafts before that date, I have Zeke still as a late first-round pick. I will not let him get into the second round. I just think ultimately when he does come back, even if he did miss 6 games, I'm personally confident in my own drafting abilities that I'm going to be able to withstand those first 6 weeks. And then I'm going to get a top 3 running back for the home stretch. So
it's kind of what we've seen every year with Rob Gronkowski as of late, right? Who's going to take the chance of going ahead and drafting him fairly where he should be and let it play out, or even Le'Veon Bell and let it play out until the games, until he comes back.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a risk that you have to take, but you have to look at who you can get right after that, or where your draft position is. Like, I think I'm 8th in our league. He'll probably still be there. But if I see a guy, we're going to get to our rankings in a bit, but if I have a guy that's ranked number 1 or 2 on my rankings, I'll probably go for them over Zeke, just because they're going to be there all the way and they're still a prominent top player. So it depends where you're drafting, how deep of a league. But I would still warrant a late first-round pick, but second round is great value, I believe.
All right, there you go. Orlando?
Yeah, in a 12-team league, second round, especially if you're one of the guys picking last, 12, 11, you're coming around, take Zeke. I mean, it absolutely makes sense. I think if you're one of those 10, 11, 12 guys in that spot picking, it would make sense to reach for Zeke. Only because of the next time you come around going into the 3rd and 4th rounds, he's not going to be there. So that would be a good time to reach for a guy like Zeke. It's just, whether it's going to be 6 or it's going to get reduced to 3 or 4, because you're not getting him until week 8. So that, it depends on how you structure your roster too. You don't want to be the guy to take Zeke and then end up 1 and 6 or 2 and 5. Week 8 after the bye by the time you get Zeke back, because you basically burn that spot, that roster spot for nothing. So
then I'll say you probably trade him at that point, and for somebody who's down on their luck as well and is entirely optimistic that Zeke will do something to help them out.
So and again too, if you're going for a guy like Zeke, you would probably want to try to grab another, a guy like Ajayi or Howard to pair with Zeke. That way you still have a number 1 guy who's going to get the bulk of the carries in the backfield, just to have that position, with the pretty good running back, and then you're going to have to fill it out, elsewhere, whether you're chasing receivers, whatever it is. So Zeke is definitely worth the second round pick, late first round pick, but it comes down to the way you can structure your roster too. It's going to be make it pretty harder for some people, and a lot of guys are going to pass on him. But if he passes on me and I'm picking later in the draft and he falls to me in my lap, I'm going to go ahead and jump on that.
So to me, here's the thing with the Zeke suspension, that his defense has come out to be, and the reason the main substance of his appeal is going to be the conflicting information with this incident of the former girlfriend. And I got no problem with that. There's no charges filed. The charges were dropped because there was conflicting information criminally to prosecute or file any charges. So I got no problem with that. And that's where we have to draw a fine line with the NFL. I hate the NFL for handing out punishment when there hasn't even been any kind of criminal conviction made. I'm in any company. I don't care if it's the NFL or your employer, whoever it is. I'm not in favor of that. Let there be the court case. Due process is what I'm saying. Due process. And so I hate that. But this suspension was not made just solely because of this conflict with the ex-girlfriend. We have the speeding incident. You have the Mardi Gras incident. It's just a pattern of reckless and bad behavior by Zeke Elliott, which is why the suspension was 6 games. That was a harsh suspension. That's why. Face it, Goodell spent, what was it, like $7 or $8 million on Deflategate to finally prove that Tom Brady may or may not have done anything. And his suspension was only 4 games. Why did they hit Zeke with 6? Because the kid is showing reckless pattern of behavior, and it's not just one incident. So if his lawyers are going to bring an appeal based on this one specific incident, that's not enough. The problem is, I'm kind of with Dan, we just don't know how long that's going to play out. But I'm not drafting him. I'm telling you right now, I have the 3rd pick in our draft, and I'm going to leave that headache to someone else. I'm not drafting him. I don't want the headache. I don't care. I'll just suffer.
What if he comes back around and he's available to you in the 2nd round?
That's great. I didn't have Zeke last year. I won a championship. I did okay without him. I'm going to build a team without Zeke Elliott in my future. That's what I'm preparing for, because I just don't know based on his behavior and what he's done. So that's why I'm not touching him. Let someone else have it. Let someone else have the headache. It's a tough situation. We don't know. If you could tell me right now for sure that Zeke would play 16 games, of course, outside injuries, we don't know, then I'm probably going to draft him 3. But because this is looming over his head, and our draft is Wednesday, and the appeal is not till the latter part of the month, I'm not touching him. So, but great hot question, Frank Tortuga. You put me in a situation to battle these 2 Cowboys fans, and that was a tough question, but I like it. I like it a lot. So, so much we've talked about already, so much more to get into, a lot more fantasy questions. You guys have been hitting us all week, and we appreciate it. And we'll do more. We got more. We got 4 or 5 more. We'll get into it before we give our top 10 rankings of all the major draft categories. We'll do that next. So more fantasy mailbag questions coming up next. This is My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. Brandon Reed, Dan Chalk is there, back finally. Worked out all the bugs. Des the Kitty hit the reset button, but he's back. Orlando Torres is here. Next question comes from Mac Man Daddy. Are we allowed to place wagers on your fantasy football league? Yeah, like, can I place a wager versus Orlando on how poorly he's going to finish? Seriously, though, guys. Keep up the smack talk. Reminds me of my league. And maybe instead of My Fantasy Sports Talk League, it can be changed to when will Orlando make the playoffs league? Can you do that, Dan? Is that still in the settings?
I can definitely do that.
Wait. Brandon, just much like the Ryan the great question, I think Dan has to do something with this question. Who? McMahon Daddy? Come on. McMahon Daddy.
McMahon Daddy.
You could be right. Here's the thing about the show, guys. Me and Orlando aren't filtering the questions. They all come from Dan. So Dan very well could be the McMahon Daddy.
It's true. Here's the thing. I'm not, but I think our fan base and listener base is starting to pick up on our Orlando hate and all that, and they like it. They're enjoying it. They're throwing it right back out. So this is kind of like Orlando's role. Orlando is finding his niche, and that is just to get blasted by our fans.
That sounds nasty.
He told you weeks ago he's not a laughing stock. He's not just some kind of play toy out here for me and Dan to humiliate. He tried to tell you all that. So
each week, going closer to the draft, I've never had so much weight and pressure on my shoulders.
You do. I'm
gonna have to crawl into the draft to the draft next season because all these questions, man, these guys are just waiting for me to fall to my demise. And Dan's
you're gonna have to.
I'm enjoying it.
He's inviting it.
The questions for
he loves it. And deep down, I think Brandon loves it too. He's trying to play second fiddle and balance it out. But I know deep down, Brandon loves it. He's getting a little break.
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of earned this one though. Okay, you've kind of earned this one a little bit. But I know I'm not loving it because it could easily fall back on me any day now. Any day, even my own personal great close friends and fans like Nick Purdens are turning on me. So it could happen any day. You never know. But anyway, the real question, guys, from this McMahon Daddy is Andy Dalton or Dak Prescott. in a league that is 1 point for every 5 rushing yards. So rushing yards really start adding up if you're a consistent runner here in this league. But the question is, Andy Dalton or Dak Prescott? Mac, man, daddy. Orlando, start us out.
Prescott. Without a doubt. I mean, you look at Prescott's going around 12, 13 in the QB rankings. And Dalton's going closer to 20. And you look at the gap, Stafford's in there. But I would definitely take Prescott over Andy Dalton, especially with the rushing. And Ezekiel is going to be gone for a number of games. They have a great O-line, but, with Zeke gone, Prescott's probably going to do some scrambling, some rushing himself. So I'll take Prescott over Dalton all day for McDan Daddy.
McDan Daddy. Well, McDan Daddy, what do you got to say for yourself?
Because it's a 5 yards per rush, I would go Dak Prescott. Just looking at the math, so like Andy Dalton, he's had a career high in his entire career of 20 yards rushing. Dak Prescott last year at 282. That's a 56-point differential. So looking at it, Dalton would need to throw like 10 more touchdowns than Prescott to make it worth it. I don't think he's going to get that much more. Yardage is going to be pretty similar. Dalton will probably end up with more. I actually take the opposite approach. If Zeke is out and is suspended, I think that'll ultimately hurt Dak's value. When Zeke wasn't on the field last year, Dak had the lowest yards per attempt at 5. He had a 5 yards per attempt with Zeke off the field last year. So I don't necessarily like that if Zeke is gone. I think he sets up the play action very well and helps keep the defenders honest. You'll stack the box more with Zeke, creating throwing lanes, but Dak hasn't proved to do anything with that. But I do like Dak with the 5 yards 1 point per 5 yards. I think ultimately you'll get the best value. But Dalton, he's a sleeper. Orlando said where he's being drafted around 20th. He's definitely going to be a top 20 quarterback in fantasy this year.
Wow. Okay, so here you go. It's Andy Dalton. This ain't even close, guys. Y'all are over analyzing this question about the 5 yards rush. It ain't like Dak is going to rush for 40 yards a game. Andy Dalton is going to have 150 to 200 more yards passing than Dak Prescott every single game.
What?
The Bengals offense is being so undervalued and underrated this year. Andy Dalton is going to finish as a top 5 or 6 fantasy quarterback this year. He has too many weapons. AJ Green needs to be higher on you guys' draft boards. You have Tyler Eifert. You have the rookie who set all the combine records, John Ross, on the team. Tyler Boyd, he has so many weapons. Joe Mixon, not to mention Giovanni Bernard is still back there in the backfield. He plays the Danny Woodhead role. Jeremy Hill, who knows, but anyway, Giovanni Bernard catches as many passes as he does rushes. So you guys are so undervaluing Andy Dalton. This ain't even going to be close. I will take Andy Dalton all day. I think there's really about a 15 or 18 spot gap here between Andy Dalton and Dak Prescott. I'm talking to two Cowboys fans here, and y'all are so overanalyzing this question.
It's everybody. It's everybody in America.
Yards.
I mean, Andy Dalton isn't drafted anywhere near a top 10 quarterback.
I don't care. It ain't happened. The season hasn't happened yet. That's why I told you last week. I don't care about ADP. Y'all
think
wait
about what you're saying of 200 yards more passing, 200 more passing yards a game.
Yeah, 150 to 200 more passing yards per game for Andy Dalton than
he had 400 last year, like total for the entire season.
Who?
Dalton had 400 more yards passing than Prescott. So now he's going to do that a game? Like,
yes, because crazy. Tyler Eifert missed how many games? I hope our fans
understand that.
AJ Green missed how many games last year? John Ross wasn't on the team. This kid set all the combine records. Who hasn't really been
able to play in training camp. I'm going to go with him.
It is a different season this year for the Bengals. Y'all keep sleeping on the Bengals.
I don't see Andy Dalton throwing for 6,000 yards. I just don't see that.
No one says he has to, but sophomore slumps happen. Dak Prescott is going to get figured out as he was starting to get figured out late last year. Zeke may be gone. Y'all keep sleeping. Y'all, this ain't even close to me. This is hysterical to me that y'all would take Dak Prescott in any situation, in any league, over Andy Dalton as a quarterback this year.
Dak Prescott scored more fantasy points than Andy Dalton last year. I mean, he scored more. So the fact that you say it's mind-blowing is crazy to me because if we look at the 1 year that we have on file of both quarterbacks, Dak Prescott was a better fantasy quarterback than Andy Dalton last year.
Andy Dalton had no weapons last year. How many games did Tyler Eifert miss? How many games did A.J. Green? That's what I'm telling you.
They could all miss it too. They're injury prone. Everybody on that offense is injury prone.
It's 2017.
Giovanni Bernard, Jeremy Hill, injury prone. Joe Mixon, he can hit a chick tomorrow and he'll be suspended for life. I mean, there's too many question marks on that defense or on that offense.
Mac Mandaddy, whoever you are out there.
Don't do it.
Whoever you are out there, just listen to this conversation, save this conversation. When we are into weeks 8, 9, 10, and see who the better fantasy value quarterback is going to be. Keep in mind, I'm talking to 2 Cowboys fans here. Andy Dalton is so much more of a valuable fantasy quarterback than Dak Prescott.
Just not based on history and stats.
We don't do that. We can't do that. Hey, Adrian Peterson should be a top 2 pick then, right?
No, because last year he averaged 1.9 yards per carry.
Okay, but now it's 2017.
Yeah, another year after 1.9 yards per carry with Adrian Peterson. I mean,
last year last year was a missed season. But what I'm saying is, based on history, Adrian Peterson is the guy that Father Time never, is always forgives, and he's always going to be there. So why not? Are we thinking that this year?
I think if Father Time is if you look at history, he's missed 28 of his last 48 games. So stats show that you should stay away from Adrian Peterson. Stats show that Dak Prescott right now is a better fantasy quarterback than Andy Dalton.
No, y'all draft him all day long. That's just more great news for me for our fantasy draft next Wednesday night live on My Fantasy Podcast at 7:30 Eastern Time. Thanks, guys. Great question, man, Mac Daddy, whoever you are, wherever you are. Y'all are crazy. This ain't even close.
I can't wait for the Brandon Reed hate questions after what you just said.
Forget that. I cannot wait till week 8, 9, 10 on you guys. I have Andy Dalton as my quarterback, and no one has Dak Prescott. Dak may be starting every other week, kind of like what Dan was doing last year. Didn't you have Dan last year, and you were starting him like every other week or so?
I don't think I ever started. I started him maybe once or twice all year.
Let's slide him in here. Let's slide him in there. All right, guys. Yeah, Cowboy love.
Andy Dalton is the next Peyton Manning on his 56 touchdown, 60 touchdown season, according to Newbury.
Andy Dalton has always had the skills, and it depends year by year. His team was decimated last year. They're going to open it up. The offense is going to be wide open, guys. It's going to be wide
Marvin
open.
Lewis runs those wide open offenses.
It ain't gonna be ground and pound. It ain't gonna be ground and pound. I can promise you that.
I think it will. I think they're gonna run more this year than they did last year. They have 3 great running backs.
Not even close. Not even close. Okay. Well, we'll agree to disagree right there and leave that question there. Let's move on. The next one comes from who named these guys? I feel like we're being set up here, Orlando. The next one comes from Smoking Jay Cutler. What the hell?
This was an email question. Smoking Jay Cutler. I won't say what email service, but this came in as an email question.
So many thoughts from
the avatar is Smoking Jay Cutler. It was pretty cool. Anything to make me laugh.
I get it. Okay, I get it with the press conference with the smoking. I get that because I almost created a meme with Jay Cutler at the press conference. It was like, okay, same old Jay Cutler, no enthusiasm at all, but at least this cool ass smoking Joe Cutler or Jay Cutler is better. But anyway, smoking Jay Cutler, whoever you are, wherever you are, God, guys, Julius Thomas, value with Cutler. He loves some tight end action. Where do you rank him? So I'll go ahead and knock this one out. Julius Thomas. So now that it looks like Jay Cutler is the Dolphins guy now, and I suspect this is a Jay Cutler fan because he loves some tight end action. I'm not high on the Dolphins receiving core this year, honestly. The jury's still out on Ajayi and can he follow this up with a second great year? So we'll see. But the second string tight end is Anthony Fasano. I thought that dude retired 4 years ago, honestly, if you want to know the truth. So I like Thomas, whether it be with Tannehill or Jay Cutler. I don't care. I just think Thomas needs to be an integral part of this offense going forward this year if he stays healthy. So I like Thomas either way, regardless of which quarterback it's going to be. I'm not sure that Cutler helps him or hurts his chances this year. I just think he needs to be a big target this year, especially to me with that receiving core. I'm not a big Devontae Parker fan. And like I said, the backup tight end is, you might as well just have one tight end. So it is what it is. I just think he needs to be a very integral part of the Dolphins offense this year if they want to have any chance in they have a chance here in this division, because the Jets are going to go winless. The Bills might go winless. They're going to suck. So the Dolphins really have a chance here in this division. How do you see this division, Dan? What's the Dolphins' chances, and how does Julius Thomas fit into a role, whether it would have been with Tannehill or now Cutler?
Yeah, I definitely think Julius Thomas' value increases with Cutler rather than Tannehill. Cutler just throws the tight ends at a higher clip than Tannehill did in the past. So I do like Thomas this year. I think he's a sleeper tight end value. His ADP right now is the 19th tight end overall selected, at 170th overall in the entire draft. So in a 10-man league, that's like the 17th round. So to me, that's insane value. I like that. I mean, looking at the tight end list, there's some guys that I would definitely take over Julius Thomas, but I think for that, where he's being drafted, I mean, you can get him in the 14th round and feel comfortable with your tight end in that type of offense. And like you said, yeah, I mean, I think that the Dolphins are the clear-cut number 2 in that division. It's the Patriots to lose, and then the other 2 bottom feeders. But I like Julius Thomas this year, especially for the value that he represents.
Yep, I agree. As he's not being drafted very high just based on the last couple of years. He really hasn't had any value since leaving the Broncos. So I think people are sleeping on what he still potentially could do, again, in a fresh start. We'll see. But Smoking Jay Cutler loves him some tight ends, Orlando.
Yeah, no, I would have him outside the top 10 definitely, but for where he's going, I wouldn't feel too good about Julius Thomas as my number 1 and probably only tight end. If I could pair him up with someone else, whoever, with the Greg Olsen or, whoever may be, Delaney Walker or something, I think that, you're going to feel a lot comfortable right there. You're getting Julius Thomas dirt cheap, but he's probably going to go undrafted in a lot of leagues. But you could have him as your second tight end, or just have him, as a stash or, as a sleeper. Yeah, I like that value right there for Julius Thomas.
Yep. So we all think there's definitely value there because people are sleeping on him. People are sleeping on Smoking Jay Cutler. Maybe he will help. Like Dan said, maybe he'll help everybody's value, but he's gonna be solid, I guess. Just, he is what he is. But Julius Thomas needs to be inserted in the offense in a big, big way, is what we're all saying. So, thanks for the question. We're gonna roll on with the mailbag questions. Got several more we're gonna get into before giving our top 10 rankings of the 4 major fantasy statistical categories in quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end before we end the show. So let's get into more mailbag questions, guys. You're listening to and watching My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. Man, this is I'm almost overwhelmed by fantasy knowledge here. We've talked about so much over the last podcast and a half now, as we're going to wrap it up and talk about a few more questions we got in here. The next one comes from Clay Travis. Andrew Luck, now that he is playing in week 1, as my 8th round pick, or Tom Brady as my 6th round pick in a 2-quarterback keeper league. I must keep one of these guys per league rules, says Clay Travis. So you got to make a choice here. What do you say, Dan? I know you're still high on Brady, so I think I know which way you're swinging with this one.
Yeah, just they're only 2 rounds apart, 6th to 8th round. I think it's actually pretty decent value for both players. But Tom Brady is just the more surefire, guaranteed bet in my eyes. Our boy Greg Doyle, Brandon's journalistic idol, had come out and said that Andrew Luck will be playing week 1, and that seems to be the case. Colts management continues to back that up. So even with Luck playing week 1, I mean, he still has a terrible offensive line, and he's going to get hit a lot, and I'm still not a fan of the weapons that he has. You have T.Y. Hilton, not sold as him as a complete number one wide receiver. So yeah, I'd go Tom Brady. I don't think it's that difficult a choice for the rounds that you're taking him in. They're very close together, and Tom Brady is just the more surefire bet for me.
Orlando, what do you think?
I'm gonna roll with Andrew Luck for 8th round guy. I know there's a lot of questions surrounding the team, but I just think, with the run game not being so sure, and I know the offensive line is quite a mess. I mean, he's going to throw the ball a lot. Last year, he had with his injury in the shoulder, he finished still as a 4th best fantasy quarterback, and that was because he injured it. He could have finished a lot higher, I think, if it wasn't for that injury. But for these two guys, I know Tom Brady is pretty up there, but I know Brandon has mentioned his age, and I don't know if he's going to throw so much this season. So looking at a guy like Andrew Luck coming in, and he's going to play week 1, I'll stick with Andrew Luck over Brady in this format.
And I agree with Orlando. It all depends on health, but you can say that on both sides. Now, hopefully, Andrew Luck is really fully 100% ready for week 1. We still got a couple of weeks away before that actually has to happen. So if they're saying that now, I kind of believe that and think that everything's going to be okay. But it's Andrew Luck, because although I don't like the Colts really at all and think they will finish last in the division in the AFC South this year, they're going to throw a lot. They always do. And with it, when you have elite quarterbacks like Andrew Luck could and should probably be upper echelon as far as calling signals at the line, just like Peyton Manning was, a very good guy right there, should be up there in that upper echelon of signal callers. So I have faith in a guy like that who will make the adjustments of the line. Yes, their offensive line is terrible, but they're going to be throwing a lot. They always do. So here's the thing, guys. I'm not touching, and I think the better value here is really Andrew Luck, because the 6th round could be spent on a very good player depending on the size of your league. Really good player. I'm not going to spend that on any quarterback, really, to be honest with you.
In a 2-quarterback league, though, it's a 2 QB league.
I understand that, but I'll wait. If I'm going to spend a 6th round pick, it's going to be for Aaron Rodgers, maybe Matt Ryan. It's not going to be Tom Brady. Here's the thing, guys. I'm not touching a 40-year-old quarterback. I don't care what the round is. I'm not going to ever. Brandon Reed will never draft a 40-year-old quarterback in any fantasy football league. That's just me. And that's as simple as I see it. And Andrew Luck is going to be throwing the ball. So to me, it's definitely Andrew Luck. To me, Andrew Luck is definitely the better value, just skipping 2 more rounds. Ryan Thomas had Andrew Luck last year, guys, and he did fairly well with him. I kicked myself a lot of times because Andrew Luck could be had in later rounds. And although I'm not a huge Andrew Luck fan or a Colts fan, he gets the job done. He is what he is. He's a slanger, and he's going to slang the ball. So 6th round is way too high for me to go on Tom Brady. Like I said, I would never draft a 40-year-old quarterback ever. I don't know if I have to repeat that. I would never draft a 40-year-old quarterback ever in anything. Just me. Hope we help, Clay Travis. Let's move on. The next one comes from John Gill. Who are your top 5 defenses? And this makes us think outside the box, guys. You got to start analyzing deep down fantasy. I'm not sure we've all got that far. I didn't, but who are your top 5 defenses, and where would you draft them in a 10-man league? Says Johnny Gill, one of my favorite old school R&B singers. Defenses, Dan.
So I'm a proponent of defenses grabbing one early if you're confident that they're an elite defense while filling out your starting lineup. So I'm cool with grabbing a defense 7th, 8th, 9th round. I'm all for it. So basically the way I ranked my top 5 defenses, the first 3 I would take between rounds 7 and 10. The last 2 I would take between rounds 8 and 11. Depending on how your draft is flowing, if defenses maybe they go on a run. So these are the defenses that I have ranked 1 to 5. First, the Vikings. 2nd, Denver. 3rd, Houston. 4th, Arizona. And 5th, the Giants. So the top 3, Minnesota, Denver, Houston, between that 7 to 10 range. And then Arizona, then Giants between that 8 and 11 range.
Okay, I'm figuring something out here. For some reason, Dan is just a Seattle hater. He refuses to like anything or anyone Seattle. I got Seattle number 1. I got Seattle number 1. I got Minnesota number 2. I got Denver number 3. I got Houston number 4. And the Giants, New York Giants number 5. But here's the thing. I'm only interested in those top elite level defenses that's going to actually score points for me in the first 10 rounds. That's just me. That's my strategy. In the last couple of years, I've really used a strategy of replacing defenses and dropping defenses every week or every other week based on matchups. Because unless you, this is my experience, unless you get one of those top 2, maybe 3 elite defenses in the league, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's all based on matchup from there. And what you need is a scoring defense. So to me, those only 2 this year are Seattle and Minnesota. I don't see anyone else as a scoring defense. They're great defenses. They're going to do solid for you, but I don't see them as scoring 20 plus points several times during the fantasy season. To me, that's only Seattle and Minnesota this year. So outside of that, those are the only 2 that I'm going to consider drafting in the first 10 rounds this year. Otherwise, I got a surprise for you guys. I already know what I'm doing with my defense, and it's going to be a shock. But I'm not going to reach for these defenses because I never has served me to do that. It just doesn't matter. Orlando?
Yeah, no, the one's definitely going to be Denver. I got Minnesota 2. I got Houston 3, Arizona 4, and then I've got New England at 5. Just throughout the years, New England, they've always been able to have a pretty damn good, defense. But where I would take them, I guess maybe around 10, I'll start to look at a defense. But even at that, I don't really follow that where I take a defense before round 12. I usually end up taking a defense anywhere between rounds 13 and 16. So by the time that comes around, all these defenses are gone. So in a lot of mocks I've been doing, I've been ending up with Jacksonville, San Diego, New York, or even Carolina. So by the time I get to pick these defenses, they're all gone, and I probably won't have them in our draft either because I'm just not the type of guy to go for and even if it's an elite defense pretty early, I rather look for value somewhere else in a player. So I wouldn't be able to rank them for you within the rounds, but those were the top 5 that I would have.
Yep, I kind of agree with Orlando there. I'm not going to reach for even one of those top 2 or 3 elite defenses, like I said. Now, if I was 100% guaranteed that one of those was going to be a top, elite defenses, and maybe I'd start looking at round 9, 10 before someone else sneaks them if I really, really want them. But I've done fine without it. I'm not really big on drafting defenses. Definitely in the first 10 rounds for sure. So, but we got to throw that in there. We got to talk defenses. Thanks for the question, John Gill. Next one comes from Anthony Tamaka. Will Frank Gore keep on trucking? I'm in a 14-man league, and I see his name and think he has value, say he's the 9th round pick. Agree? Anthony Tamaka. So I'm really the wrong person to be asking about this because I don't know what this fascination with Frank Gore is. I know he had a decent fantasy year last year, but especially at this point when he's a 35-year-old, okay? So this production, this fantasy production he had last year, which he was decent. I think he finished top 12 or so in our league, but let's break it down. Only 3 games over 80 yards all season, and only 4 touchdowns all season long. This to me is the Aaron Rodgers syndrome. It's the Tom Brady syndrome. Anytime you have an elite level quarterback, or like I said, a signal caller who is going to be dominating the offense and throwing at least 35, 40 times a game, I don't really like any of their running backs. That's just not a team where you're going to get steadily doses. You're going to get lucky weeks, but you're not going to get steady doses of what you really ideally want from your running back. So I don't get it. I don't really know what this fascination with Frank Gore is, and I don't know why. I wouldn't touch him really, me personally, in the first 8 rounds, especially now that he's a 35-year-old running back on a team that doesn't really like to run the ball. Just me.
Yeah, but you said you wouldn't take him within the first 8 picks. This guy, I think Anthony's saying the 9th. Yeah, so in the 9th, if Frank Gore's there, I'll give him a look. I think there's value in the 14-team league. You look at, who else is there? Marlon Mack and Robert Turbin. I really do like Marlon Mack. I think he's going to make a push for some more carries. But Frank Gore in the 9th round in 14-man league, I think that's pretty good value. I don't know if he's going to keep on trucking. The wheels are eventually going to fall off.
That's why I'm scared now. And I agree with you. And yeah, let me clarify. That's not bad for a 14-man league. And I wouldn't. And I guess I was saying in our league, which is not. Which we are 14 now, right? So it's pretty deep.
14-team redraft, courtesy of Brandon Reed.
Yeah, it wasn't courtesy because of me, because we had new guys. It was physically impossible to do a keeper league with new guys. But I don't know. I'm not touching him. He's 35 years old on a team. Like I said, ultimately the point is he's 35 years old on a team that doesn't like to run the ball. So that's why I'm not touching him. But not based on, like Dan likes to say, based on history, then that's not a bad value if you can get him in the 9th round in a 14-man league. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, you look, the ADP there is 126th overall, around there for the 9th round in a 14-man league. So it is good value. I would draft Marlon Mack in that spot ahead of Frank Gore. I am very high on Marlon Mack. He's a guy who averaged 6.2 yards per carry throughout his entire college career at South Florida. 3 1,000-yard seasons. He had like 3,700 yards in his 3-year college career. So I'm very high on Marlon Mack. I would take him in that 9th round in a 14-man league in that spot ahead of Frank Gore. I just think ultimately by week 4, he's going to be getting the touches. He's going to be younger. He's going to be able to stay out a little bit later, not going to be able to take naps during meetings. Basically, Brandon calls it this gunslinger, or, the high volume quarterback.
Signal caller.
Signal caller. I say it's the San Antonio Spurs syndrome. They're old, and Frank Gore is old, so he's going to go to bed early, and he's not going to be able to produce as high on the football field this year. So I would stay away.
Oh, I have to agree with that. Andrew Luck's not old, though. He's the point guard. He's
no, just Frank Gore. Frank Gore is the San Antonio Spurs of the Colts.
No doubt about that. Look, guys, a 35-year-old running back. How old is Adrian Peterson now? Is he 35, 36?
33, I think, 32.
31.
Oh, even younger than that. My God. So you would consider Frank Gore? No, I don't know. Yeah, I agree with Dan. That you're getting beyond the point of risk right there. I don't think you're going to be happy with that at all, but we'll see. It depends on what's left. There's just several other guys that I would take before, and these guys make a great point with Marlon Mack. Maybe he's the guy. Maybe you need to start looking towards the future in that Indianapolis Colts. But my ultimate point is signal caller. Anybody that's going to throw the ball 35, 40 times a game and almost hate to run the ball, I don't really want any of their running backs. But maybe there's other options out there. You may be able to get Marlon Mack even lower than that, guys. But great question, Anthony Tamako. Let's take one more, guys. Let's just take one more before we end the show and get into our top 10 fantasy rankings. So the last one comes from Dan Kelly. Must be one of my boys close from here in Tennessee. But hey, guys, I missed the show. I've missed the last few shows, and I think Brandon is the Titans guy. So question for him. I can keep Tajay Sharp as my last round pick in a half-point PPR keeper league. What are his chances of being the top 3 wide receiver on the Titans team? Good or bad camp? Thanks, fellas. Dan Kelly. And Dan, first of all, right here, I guess, what is he saying? Is he having a good or bad training camp? Are we looking at the outlook here in training camp? Is that your understanding of the question?
Yeah, well, I think he's asking you if he should keep Tajay Sharp. Realistically, is he a top 3 receiver on the Titans? That's how I got it. I don't really know what his camp thing means there. Maybe if he's having a bad camp, he wouldn't be a top 3 receiver.
Right. Okay, I got you. But he's definitely having a bad camp. Okay. That's a tough call, though, really, because, he's being passed over in camp right now by several guys because he's not out there. He's currently injured with a foot injury or something, I believe. So that's keeping him out of training camp right now. So he's not even being able to get out there on the field. He's being bypassed by guys like Dan's own Taiwan Taylor. So I just think your number one, number two guys are definitely Corey Davis, Rashard Matthews. I don't care which way you flip them, 1, 2, but they're definitely going to be 1 and 2. Then you got Eric Decker thrown into the situation. If he can stay healthy, I think he's a decent receiver. I think he's not the best, and he's going to be having some competition from guys like Tajay Sharp, and Taiwan Taylor. We'll see how it all plays out, but ultimately I think he's going to have competition, and I'm not convinced he can stay healthy the whole year. That I think it's his right leg is taking a lot of injuries. He's got a lot of stuff going on there, so we'll see if he can stay healthy. But as far as good or bad camp, if that is the question, he's having a bad camp because he's not playing and he's currently injured, so he's being passed up. And guys like Taiwan Taylor are looking great. I don't know if you saw that preseason game, but guys like that are looking great. The first preseason game, so. I don't know. I think Eric Decker will be slipping, but I do not think Tajay Sharp, at the most optimistically we can ask for this year, I do not think Tajay Sharp has a realistic chance of sustaining to be a top 3 receiver on the Titans. As Dan has mentioned, with that slew of receivers they got. So Corey Davis, Rashard Matthews, Taiwan Taylor, which Dan is huge on, and then, of course, adding Eric Decker to the mix. I don't see any way that Tajay Sharp makes his way back, early on at least, in time for your draft, to make it into a top 3 receiver this year. I don't know, man, although Tajay Sharp had his flashes last year, right, Dan? But I'm not so sure this year.
Yeah, it's tough. I think he'll probably go undrafted in most formats, so keeping him as a last-round pick, while it's not a huge risk, you could probably grab a guy with a little bit higher upside in that spot.
Like Taiwan Taylor. Do you think there's a possibility Taiwan Taylor is going to be available at that spot?
It's possible, yeah. Depending on how Corey Davis's hamstring is.
But besides that, I think Corey Davis is going to go. People, even Orlando said they're going to take a chance on Corey Davis a lot earlier than that, but I'm not so sure that people are seeing Taiwan Taylor as that type of guy. So if you had to make that decision last round, Taiwan Taylor, Tajay Sharp, who are you?
I would definitely take Taylor over Sharp. I think Sharp's best bet is the wide receiver 4 in Tennessee. I don't think Decker – I don't see him being a factor at all this season. I think if he even continues to stay on the 53-man roster, he's going to be on the bench. So I do like Sharp as that 4th guy, but in fantasy leagues, it offers very little value. So I would leave it and just draft somebody else, whoever the best available player at that time. Even if it is Sharp, take Sharp then. It's not going to hurt you any.
Yeah, it's a tough question. We're talking about, last round here. We're talking about very low, and Sharp had flashes last year. Orlando, what would you do? This is a tough situation. Would you just drop it and draft the best available at that position? Or, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think I would drop it and draft the best available. I don't even know if he makes it one in the top 3 in that depth chart. So I would honestly drop it and see best available. But that's just me. I know you're the Titans guy, so you might feel a little bit more different.
No, I agree with what Dan said and kind of the path I was leading him down. I think Taiwan Taylor could very well be left either undrafted in a lot of leagues or, there for you to have of the taking for the last round. And right now, based on what I'm seeing out of training camp and the hype from Taiwan Taylor and what he's doing in preseason games and just the fact that Tajay Sharp is injured right now and not being caught back up to speed in his second year, then I think Taiwan Taylor's probably the better pick or the better gamble, at least for that pick, or just draft someone else and forget the Titans altogether. Maybe your best option, but that's it. Appreciate the love, appreciate the Titans love, appreciate the great question, Dan Kelly. That's all of our mailbag questions, folks, this week. So, we received, that was only a fraction of everything we received, so we could have got a lot more, but we want to wrap up the show real quick by giving you our top 10, right? Not going to get into a debate here. It's just food for thought for you guys on what we're thinking heading into our draft and maybe what you're thinking and help solidifying some of your decisions on these top positions in your fantasy draft. So top 10 each position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. Orlando, let's hear your list first. Let's go with quarterbacks.
I got Rodgers, Luck, Brady, Breeze, Winston, Matt Ryan, Mariota, Cousins, Derek Carr, and Cam Newton right at 10. Do you want me to go on to running backs?
No,
Yeah.
let me soak that in right now. He has Andrew Luck way up there, Dan.
I'm telling you, I'm high on Andrew Luck. I mean, come on, over 40-year-old Brady, give me Andrew Luck.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am with you.
Andrew Luck, yeah.
I'm with you.
He hasn't thrown yet.
Hey, but according to Craig Doyle, the great Greg Doyle, if he's going to play week 1,
let's just hear Brandon say Greg Doyle's great.
Do you want me to go, Dan, or do you want to go?
I'll give you mine. I mean, this is on the site. I took it right from there. I posted an article with my quarterback rankings. Jameis Winston, number 1. I have Drew Brees, number 2. Aaron Rodgers, number 3. Cam Newton, number 4. Matt Ryan, 5. Tom Brady, 6. Marcus Mariota, 7. Andrew Luck, 8. Derek Carr, 9. And Matthew Stafford, 10.
Wow, this is why I love this conversation. I can't even soak all this up right now. I'm going to have to go back and listen to the podcast. I hope you guys
me
are
and Dan did have Mariota 7 and Carr 9. So we agree on something.
Here's the thing. You guys are a lot higher on my Titans guy and my Titans signal caller than I am because he's not in my top 10. That's why I'm going to have to just soak this up later and see what you guys said. Here's my top 10. Aaron Rodgers. I don't think there's any question about that, guys. My God, Aaron Rodgers.
Third ranked.
Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Andy Dalton, Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Phillip Rivers, Matthew Stafford. That's my top 10.
Getting physically ill.
You keep saying that. These are going to be the daily fantasy guys that you play. You ain't playing no one in daily fantasy on average more than these guys right here. These are going to be the quarterbacks this year. I'm telling you. Just listen to my list. We'll make notes afterwards. I don't even know what y'all said. Neither one of y'all had Aaron Rodgers number 1, did you? God, y'all are crazy.
No, I had a Rodgers 1.
You made sense. You made a little bit of sense there, Orlando.
But you, Andy Dalton before Andrew Luck. We're running out of time. Go ahead.
We are running out of time, and I'm trying to tell y'all we've talked about Andy Dalton enough. Running backs. My top 10. David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott, Devontae Freeman. And this is outside suspension. This is just talent, what you should draft. Okay, this is as far as talent goes the way I see it. That's why Ezekiel was 3. But David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott. 4 is Devontae Freeman. 5 is LaShawn McCoy, Melvin Gordon, Lamar Miller, Jordan Howard, Spencer Ware, Leonard Fournette. Orlando?
Okay, I got Zeke a little bit down, but it's only because of the current situation. So I got David Johnson 1, Le'Veon Bell 2. I got Devonta Freeman 3, Jay Ajayi 4, Jordan Howard 5, Melvin Gordon 6. I got Zeke 7, Todd Gurley 8, Leonard Fournette 9, and DeMarco Murray 10. And I don't even feel good about putting Murray at 10.
No, but I like the Orlando had Leonard Fournette as well in the top 10 because I guarantee you Dan is not going to have Leonard Fournette in the top 10. Dan, what's your top 10?
Number 1, Leonard Fournette. Number 1, I got David Johnson. Number 2, Le'Veon Bell. Number 3, Jordan Howard. Number 4, Melvin Gordon. Number 5, Zeke. Number 6, DeMarco Murray. Number 7, Jay Ajayi. Number 8, LaShawn McCoy. Number 9, Todd Gurley. And number 10, Isaiah Crowell.
Now, see, this is why I love these lists, guys, because you see how much difference and disparity there is between our list already and what we're thinking up here. And that's why drafts fall the way they do, because you never know what someone's thinking and the way someone has got another player ranked in his head and what he thinks they're going to be. It's a great list. So let's move on. Wide receivers, Dan.
My number 1 wide receiver is Michael Thomas. Number 2 is Mike Evans. Number 3 is Odell Beckham. Number 4 is Julio Jones. Number 5 is A.J. Green. Number 6, Antonio Brown. Number 7, Dez. Number 8, Demaryius Thomas. Number 9, Jordy Nelson. And number 10, DeAndre Hopkins.
Crazy right there. Man, AB really slipped in your rankings, Dan. Yeah, at least 6.
6. And he's lucky he's 6.
And you better like it. Orlando, let's hear your list.
I'm not going that far off what Antonio Brown. I got Antonio Brown 1, Odell 2, Mike Evans 3, Julio Jones 4. I got Michael Thomas number 5, T.Y. Hilton 6, Brandon Cooks 7, Des Bryant 8, AJ Green 9, and Jordy Nelson 10.
Okay, nice list. I got a question. I don't know if it's just Andy Dalton hate or what the hell happened to the AJ Green love. God, this dude is elite, guys. This dude is elite.
Yes, it's elite.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm with you there. I don't know. I don't think he's being overrated or underrated. But here we go. Okay, and I hate to even do this list because I'm giving away so much, but my number 1 wide receiver is Mike Evans. Number 2, Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., AJ Green, Jordy Nelson, Amari Cooper, Des Bryant is 8, Michael Thomas is 9, and Alshon Jeffrey is going to sneak in there at number 10 because what else are they going to do? What else are they going to do? So that's the wide receiver rankings. Let's move on to tight end. Orlando?
All right, so obviously I got Gronk 1. I got Travis Kelce 2, Jimmy Graham number 3, Tyler Eifert 4. I got Kyle Rudolph number 5, Greg Olsen 6, Jordan Reed 7, Delaney Walker 8, Eric Ebron number 9, and Hunter Henry number 10.
Fairly close to what I got. Dan?
Gronk number 1, Greg Olsen 2, Travis Kelce 3, Jimmy Graham 4, Jordan Reed 5, Tyler Eifert 6, Delaney Walker 7, Martellus Bennett 8, Zach Ertz 9, Evan Ingram 10.
I got tired of just getting burned by the Zach Ertz every year. I'm tired of it.
Best season as a pro last year.
I like the fact that Evan Ingram made your top 10 because he's that close. He's probably 11, at 12 at the lowest on my list, Dan. But you guys are about to be shocked. Okay, just listen to my list real closely. And first of all, you heard me earlier. I'm not a Jimmy Graham fan, so Jimmy Graham is not even on my list, not my top 10. Okay, but listen closely. My top 10 is number 1, Greg Olsen. Number 2, Jordan Reed. Number 3, Travis Kelce. Number 4, Tyler Eifert. Number 5, Delaney Walker. Number 6, Martellus Bennett. Number 7, Zach Ertz. Number 8, Cameron Brate. Number 9, Hunter Henry. And number 10, Eric Ebron. Guys, what stuck out about my tight end list?
No Gronk.
Because he ain't gonna play. Because he ain't gonna play. I'm done with this dude. I'm done with the Gronkowski. He ain't gonna play 16 games. He ain't gonna play 9 games, guys. I'm done with him.
And Martellus Bennett is gonna spend majority of his time in Green Bay blocking for Aaron Rodgers. All right.
Hey, Dan, what did you have Martellus Bennett?
I had him 8th.
He's up there. No, Orlando. What Martellus Bennett does is catches end zone touchdowns. Oh my God, this is gonna be the best quarterback he's ever played with. I mean, pretty good year.
Better than Tom Brady.
As far as I don't know. Aaron Rodgers is amazing with the football, especially in the red zone. He pinpoint placement. It's not going to be an offset. It's not going to be a drop off. Aaron Rodgers is the number 1 fantasy quarterback for the last several years. Okay, it ain't a drop off. Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to place that ball exactly where Martellus Bennett wants it, and he's going to be catching end zone, red zone touchdowns. I love it. But anyway, great list, guys. We're going to soak that all up and make notes and figure out what the other person's thinking before our draft next Wednesday night. Let's move on. Dan, what's going on the website right now besides all the fantasy stuff?
No, it's just fantasy stuff. I mean, we're blowing it out, killing it.
Okay, but
a ton of stuff daily.
Seriously, Food Network star.
Yeah, entertainment section, doing well. Very happy to see Jason Smith, friend of the site, take home the title of Food Network star. It was great. It was it's something. It's weird, just covering him and being able to talk and speak with him via social media and different things, and how he likes and reads the site myfantasysportstalk.com, and for him to to be able to win that type of competition and basically become an instant celebrity overnight is great. And he's still followed and gave us some shout outs on social media since he's been named champion. And in an interview is possibly in the works to be set up to be able to sit down and get a full-length interview out on how his experience was on the competition and what's next for the future. Winning the show, you get your own TV show. You're the headliner of New York's Food Network's Wine and Cheese Festival or something like that, and you have a whole spread in the Food Network magazine. So bright future ahead for Jason Smith, and I'm excited to be able to continue to cover him on My Fantasy Sports Talk.
We saw it all play out all season long right here on myfantasysportstalk.com, and Jason Smith has been very good about retweeting our articles and following us and reading the site and keeping up with it. So much congratulations to our man for winning it, and he'll have his own show that we can keep up with soon as well and continue the coverage here on myfantasysportstalk.com. Orlando, big fight coming up. When is the fight? Is it this weekend or next weekend? I don't even know.
Yeah, next weekend, and we already got a big thing going on, friends, going on, bets and everything. Might end up being a bogus fight, I don't know. But it was announced today that both fighters agreed to use 8-ounce gloves, so that is a bit of a shocker, especially on Mayweather's part, being that in boxing, traditionally, you want to go with the heavier, bigger ounces, where in MMA, you stick anywhere between 4 to 8 ounces. So that was a bit of a shocker. But, yeah, the fight's next week, so looking forward to that fight, even though it's clouding over the Canelo and Triple G fight, which is ridiculous.
And that's why I really haven't talked much about it. I don't have anything much to say about it, but I know I know Ryan Thomas will be talking about it a lot. So there'll be coverage on the site for sure with the McGregor-Mayweather fight coming up. But next week we really won't spend any time talking about it because next week is just pure fantasy draft. So we all come down. We've almost waited like a whole year, it seems like, to do this again. And that's what we're going to do next week. So that's what we'll do. That's the rundown. No rundown really next week. It's going to be all fantasy football on our fantasy football draft. That's it. We'll see where you guys can probably send us feedback the next day as to how low Orlando's going to be in the rankings.
You look at it as a comedy show next week for Orlando's draft. So, that's why you'll want to tune in.
And I think that's what we'll do on the podcast the following week, guys, is we'll do a draft recap, and we want your feedback as much as possible. Send as many comments or whatever you want. How did we all do? Rank us and just talk about how dumb we were, how smart we were, who had the steals of the draft, who you think might end up being champion based on the rosters. We're mixing the myfantasysportstalk.com writers along with the fans, so it's going to be very entertaining as well next week. So do not miss that 7:30 Eastern time My Fantasy podcast, our live myfantasysportstalk.com fantasy draft. And that's all we're going to do. Thanks to Orlando Torres for joining us and once again absorbing all the hate and dishing it back. For my co-host, Dan Schalk, I am Brandon Reed. See you next week. Big week. MyFantasySportsTalk.com fantasy draft, 7:30 Eastern time. Join us. Till then, later. Podcast peeps. Peace.